I worked with Bob Dylan too. I was a barista at the coffee shop he not so secretly owned
Where I
in
first
Santa
met
Monica.
him. That's where the first place I met him, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact,
18th Street Coffee.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which is still there. I don't know if he still owns it.
I think it closed during the pandemic.
Right. It seems like I was.
Is it open?
I drove by it.
Really?
He actually, I think, owns that entire block.
Yeah, that block.
But when I was first asked, would you be interested in meeting Bob Dylan to talk about a project? I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, of course I would. And never did I think that it would turn into anything. I just thought, I'm going to have a great story.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet Bob Dylan. I'm going to be able to tell all my friends I met Bob Dylan. It's going to be like a little status thing.
Yeah.
So when I got there and I sat down, I said, I'm here to see, Bob, trying to be cool about it. And they were used to that. The people that worked there, they said, okay, just sit down over there. And eventually from the back, because he had the boxing ring in the back.
Yeah, the boxing ring.
And he kind of stumbled out in exactly the same clothes that he wore through the entire 2 or 3 years that I knew him, just like the gray hoodie, fatigue pants, and these big kind of combat boots. And we sat down, and somebody came over to the table and said, you guys want something to drink? And he said, I want a hot beverage. I want a hot beverage. And I said, I'll just have an iced coffee. And they went away. When they came back, they put the hot beverage and the iced coffee down, and he immediately took my iced coffee and started drinking it. And now I'm in this is the first time I've met him. And I'm like, what do I do now? Do I say, hey, man, you're drinking my drink? Or, what? And he's like, and he's drinking my drink, and we're talking. We're getting along great. I'm making him laugh. We're having a really good time, actually. And finally he says, how come you're not drinking your drink? And I said, you're drinking my drink, actually. And he kind of laughed. I don't know if it was a test or whether he wasn't thinking about it or what it was. And that kind of bonded us, actually, weirdly enough.
Okay.
Yeah, and we started working right then and there on this project.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah,
Just like the moment of confrontation bonded you?
Yeah, he's the kind of person where he's so off the cuff in his decision making.
Yeah.
And trusted so much. I mean, the thing that I learned from Bob Dylan is trust your instincts.
Yeah.
Don't question them. They could be totally wrong, but that's all you have.
Yeah.
Just trust your instincts. It was really like a liberating lesson. And because when I said I wanted to direct a film, and I was like scared to ask, and I had directed one curb. And I couldn't believe I had directed one curb because I finally was now a director. And I would say to my wife at the time, what do I do? How do I bring this up even? I mean, anybody would want to direct this movie. Martin Scorsese would say yes. Anybody would say yes to this movie. How am I going to say to him, I think I should direct the movie? And she said, you're just going to have to ask him. And I went in one day, I went, Bob, I have to say, I really know the material really well. We wrote it together. I think I'd be the best person to direct the movie. And he was like, okay. And then he went back to whatever he was doing. And that was it.
As simple as that.
Yeah, it was as simple as that because he trusted it,
Well, that almost was its own Curb episode, you and the Bob with the coffee.
Oh, very much,
in Santa Monica, nonetheless.
Very much, yeah.
Well, and trust me, as someone who made him coffee and was terrible at making coffee, I think he really didn't know.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Because I had no idea how I would just fry those lattes. I just thought you just try to build a bubble bath out of it if you can. Sometimes you can't. And pour it in and let it rip. No one was coming there for the coffee, and he didn't seem to be a stickler. I didn't ever meet him though.
Yeah.
It was probably later than that, and he'd be in and out through the back. But
he's
saw him
such a
once
brilliant guy. And we're talking about books. I mean, he's the most well-read person
interesting.
I think I ever met.
No kidding.
Oh my God. And not just well-read, but like memorized. I've read a lot of books, but I can't say I've memorized much. But he can draw lines and sections from books. If you've ever noticed him on stage, he never, for all his dense wording and lyrics, he never looks at any kind of teleprompter or anything like that. He knows, he has some kind of savant-like ability.
His mind works.
Yeah, and so he knows the words to all his songs, 500 songs or maybe more. And those long, Hard Rain, Blowing in the Wind, he knows them all by heart and never wavers.
Unreal.
Yeah, that is unreal.
I mean, that was my epiphany this week as I understood that I don't my whole thought about reading now is I don't need to absorb what I read. It's just a pleasure encountering it.
Yes.
And that's where I got to live with it.
Yeah.
Because,
well, when you're younger, you're so memorization is such an important part of schooling.
Yeah.
At least when I was a kid. I don't know if that's still the case, actually.
I don't either.
But you would have to kind of memorize if you were doing a play or reading plays. I got into reading plays for a long time. In fact, the book that I didn't bring today that I thought about from high school was The Essential Lenny Bruce. I had never seen Lenny Bruce before. Where were you going to see him? There was no YouTube.
Yeah.
There were no movies about him at that time. And but I'd heard about him or read about him, and I went to the library in 10th grade, and they had The Essential Lenny Bruce, which I think I stole from the library, and which I'm not proud of.
Hey.
But it did lead to the library cop.
The library cop,
Right.
Yeah. You created an iconic
but
library.
it was a book of his bits. And I would work on trying to just learn his bits, just so I had it in my head that I can kind of reel it off. Because I was pretty good with movies, because my father would drill me,
So you started drilling yourself?
Yeah, I started drilling myself a little bit, and I was pretty good at it for a while. But that book also was like, wow, there's stand-up comedy that I had never heard, the allusions to these literary things, these political things. He wasn't doing like mother-in-law jokes like Alan King and people like that who were great, and I loved them.
Yeah.
But he was doing about John Kennedy being shot and stuff like that. I was like, wow. Again, you could do that,
Right.
Wow. I
Wow.
didn't even know you could do that. He was like dead by the time I even got conscious of him,
Eye-opening.
Yeah, very,
these
very
books just kept giving you aha moments.
Yes.
They kept just broadening your world.
Yes.
And also probably encountering his work written versus nowadays, if a kid likes a comic, they can see their TikTok, their YouTube.
Exactly.
And you're seeing the wording in the sort of arrangement of the words.
Yes.
And the mathematics of a punchline.
And I'd have to figure out what it sounded like in my head.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes different than the way he did it. And he also was a great master of voices and dialects and things like that, which I couldn't imagine in my own head. But that he was able, once I heard his records, it's like, oh, wow, he does this like in a Yiddish voice.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's doing an impression of this obscure actor. It was hard to really know that stuff. So I was really getting just this kind of transcript.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
The
it was
fundamentals.
Great. Yeah. And that you talking about that actually brings me to another book.